Some people see what is happening, others notice why it's happening. And then there are people who seem to notice what everyone else completely missed. The Sigma female archetype is often described this way. She may sit quietly while everyone else is talking, but somehow she's processing everything. The words, the tone, the behavior, the contradictions, the consequences. She doesn't necessarily think faster than everyone else. She simply tends to think differently. While others search for immediate answers, she searches for deeper questions. While others react to what they feel, she examines why they feel it. And while everyone else is trying to understand her, she's often trying to understand herself. That's what makes this personality archetype so fascinating. Her mind isn't necessarily louder. It's layered. Today we're exploring 10 signs a Sigma female's mind works completely differently. And some of these signs may explain why she often feels misunderstood even when she's surrounded by people. Let's begin. Most people see an event. The Sigma female looks for the mechanism behind it. Someone suddenly becomes distant. Instead of immediately thinking, they don't like me anymore, she starts asking questions. What changed? When did it change? What happened immediately before the change? Is there a pattern? Maybe the person is dealing with something unrelated. Maybe their behavior is intentional. Maybe the relationship itself has changed. She doesn't immediately choose one explanation. She explores possibilities. This habit can make her seem unusually perceptive. But often, she's simply uncomfortable with superficial explanations. She wants to understand the cause, not just the symptom. And this applies far beyond relationships. At work, in friendships, in social situations, even when observing herself. She isn't satisfied with knowing what happened. She wants to know why. One of the strangest things about a highly reflective mind is that it doesn't automatically trust itself. The Sigma female can have a strong opinion and still ask, what if I'm wrong? That's not insecurity. It's intellectual self-awareness. She understands that the human brain has biases. It looks for patterns. It protects existing beliefs. It remembers information that confirms what it already believes. So she occasionally steps back from her own thoughts. She asks, am I seeing reality or what I expect to see? Would I think differently if I weren't emotionally involved? What evidence would prove me wrong? Most people ask questions to confirm their beliefs. She sometimes asks questions that could destroy them. And that's uncomfortable. But it's also one of the fastest ways to grow. Because the person who can challenge her own thinking becomes much harder for other people to manipulate. Words tell her one story. Behavior tells her another. And she notices someone says they respect boundaries, but repeatedly crosses them. Someone claims they don't care about attention, yet constantly seeks validation. Someone says they're happy for her, but their behavior changes whenever she succeeds. The Sigma female doesn't necessarily confront these contradictions immediately. She stores them. One contradiction can be meaningless. People are complicated, but repeated contradictions create patterns, and patterns create information. This is why she may suddenly distance herself from someone without giving a dramatic explanation. From the outside, it looks sudden. Inside her mind, the conclusion may have been forming for months. She's been collecting small pieces of information. Eventually, they form a picture. And once the picture becomes clear, she stops arguing with what she can see. The Sigma female archetype is often associated with independence, but there's something deeper behind it. She can enjoy people without needing people constantly. She can spend an entire evening with friends and have an amazing time, then happily spend the next day alone. She doesn't interpret solitude as rejection. She doesn't need constant messages to feel important. She doesn't need to be invited everywhere. and she doesn't automatically feel something is wrong when she's alone. Her mind often uses solitude differently. It becomes processing time, thinking time, creative time, recovery time. She may replay a conversation from earlier. Think about an idea, read something interesting, or simply enjoy doing nothing. This creates an unusual relationship with social attention. She can appreciate it without becoming dependent on it. And that's a powerful form of independence. The easiest way to avoid thinking is to let everyone else think for you. The Sigma female tends to resist that instinct. If everyone suddenly loves something, she doesn't automatically love it. If everyone hates someone, she doesn't automatically hate them. If society says this is how you're supposed to live, she quietly asks, why? This doesn't mean she rejects everything conventional. She can agree with popular opinions. She can appreciate traditions. She can follow advice. But she wants to understand the reasoning first. Her goal isn't to be different. Her goal is to be authentic, and sometimes authenticity happens to look unconventional. She'd rather make a decision she genuinely believes in than make the socially acceptable decision and spend years wondering what would have happened if she trusted herself. That independence of thought is one of the strongest characteristics associated with the Sigma archetype. And it's also why she can sometimes feel like an outsider, even when everyone around her is perfectly comfortable following the same path. The strange thing is, she doesn't necessarily want to stand apart. She simply doesn't want to disappear into the crowd. Most people judge situations one event at a time. The Sigma female often connects events together. Someone disappoints her once, she may forgive it. Twice, she pays attention. But if the same behavior keeps repeating, she stops treating each incident as an isolated event. She sees the pattern. This is one reason she can sometimes appear unusually intuitive. She's unconsciously comparing the present with everything she's already observed. A person's words, their previous behavior, their reactions under pressure, the way they treat people who can't benefit them, the promises they keep, and the promises they repeatedly break. She's not necessarily trying to analyze everyone. Her brain simply notices repetition, and repetition reveals character. That's why she may know something is wrong before she can fully explain why. She has already recognized the pattern. Her conscious mind just hasn't finished putting it into words. The Sigma female can feel intensely, but she doesn't believe every emotion deserves immediate action. She can be angry and wait before responding. She can be attracted to someone and still evaluate whether they're actually compatible. She can feel lonely without immediately returning to a relationship that wasn't healthy. This is an important distinction. She doesn't suppress emotions. She creates space around them. She asks, what am I feeling? Then, why am I feeling it? And finally, what should I actually do about it? Those are three completely different questions. And separating them gives her control, because an emotion can contain useful information without being a perfect description of reality. Fear might signal danger, or it might come from an old experience. Anger might reveal a genuine boundary violation, or it might be amplified by stress. She doesn't blindly trust either extreme. She investigates, and that makes her decisions much less reactive. The Sigma female doesn't only ask, what happens if I do this? She often asks, what happens after that? And then, where could that eventually lead? She understands that decisions have layers. A seemingly harmless compromise today can become a pattern tomorrow. A small habit can eventually become a lifestyle. A relationship that constantly drains her can slowly change her confidence. A decision that feels uncomfortable now might create freedom later. This is why she can sometimes make choices that others don't understand. She may walk away from something exciting, decline an opportunity everyone else wants, take a slower path, Choose uncertainty over something familiar. From the outside, it may look irrational, but she may be thinking several steps ahead. She isn't trying to predict the future perfectly. She's simply considering the future consequences before committing to the present decision. This is a subtle difference. The Sigma female can study human behavior without automatically judging it. She can understand why someone is insecure, why someone needs attention, why someone becomes defensive, why someone keeps repeating destructive patterns. Understanding doesn't mean approving. That's important. She can recognize the psychology behind someone's behavior and still decide that she doesn't want that behavior in her life. This gives her an unusual ability to remain emotionally detached from other people's chaos. Instead of thinking, why are they acting like this? She may think, what happened in their life that taught them to behave this way? That question doesn't excuse harmful behavior. It simply creates understanding. And understanding often gives her something anger cannot: perspective. This may be the biggest difference of all. The Sigma female doesn't see her identity as something permanently fixed. She changes. She learns. She outgrows old beliefs. She abandons habits that no longer serve her. She changes her mind. She changes her goals. Sometimes she even surprises herself. And that's because she's willing to ask one uncomfortable question: what if the person I was isn't the person I need to remain? That's a powerful question, because many people spend their lives defending an identity they created years ago. I'm just an anxious person. I'm not good at relationships. I'm not ambitious. I could never do that. The Sigma female begins questioning these labels. Maybe they were never permanent truths. Maybe they were simply descriptions of an earlier version of herself. So she evolves, not to impress people, not to prove anyone wrong, but because she realizes that remaining the same isn't always consistency. Sometimes it's simply refusing to grow. The Sigma female's mind doesn't necessarily work differently because she's smarter than everyone else. It works differently because she tends to question what other people accept automatically. She looks beneath the surface, questions her own assumptions, notices contradictions, recognizes patterns, separates emotions from decisions, thinks about consequences, studies human behavior, and constantly updates her understanding of herself. That's why she can sometimes appear difficult to understand. People see her silence, but not everything she's processing. They see her decision, but not the months of thought that led to it. They see her walking away, but not the hundreds of small moments she noticed before making that choice. And perhaps that's the biggest misconception about this Sigma female. People think she's unpredictable, when in reality, she may be one of the most predictable people once you understand what guides her. She values truth over appearances, freedom over approval, depth over attention, and self-respect over belonging. She doesn't need everyone to understand the way her mind works, because she has already learned something more important. You don't need to be understood by everyone to understand yourself. And maybe that's the real difference. Not thinking more than everyone else, but thinking deeply enough to question even yourself. If you recognized yourself in these signs, let me know in the comments which one describes the way your mind works most closely. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more content about Sigma female psychology, intelligence, relationships, self-awareness, and personal growth. Because sometimes the most fascinating mind in the room is the one nobody can immediately figure out